I obviously have to work it into my own work schedule. So Thursday was the cutoff point. But if you're new, you can set it up now, and if you can get it to me, what day are we? Monday? Yeah, if you could try get it to me maybe tomorrow, and then I can't guarantee what day this week I'll be able to get it done, but I'll get it done for you.
Yeah, that's no worries.
Okay?
Yeah,
if anybody missed
thanks,
last week, because you won't be able to do your
worries.
final project without that board, basically. Okay.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks.
Great. I think everybody's here. I have a guest link. Oh, hi, Valerie. How are you? My recording person. Yes, we have to coordinate a bit better. Valerie, will you pop me an email so I have your email and I can hand that duty back to you then maybe next week?
Grand. Not a problem.
Good yourself, because it's great, because then I don't have to be thinking about it. So just for new people, we have a couple of new people that have joined. So hello and welcome to all of you. And just so everyone else knows, we have new people here. I was just going over there for anybody who's new, who didn't get the chance to get their board to me. If you can send it through, get it through to me by tomorrow. I can't guarantee at what point or time I will copy the framework over, but I'll do it as soon as I can. I just wanted to highlight, again, if I ask you to do something by a certain time, if you could just do that, because I'm working in several different places, that'd be great. Is there anything else I need to go through? Yeah, just with emails, again, because there's so many of you in the class and I'm dealing with lots of people, including my own regular day work. So if you email me, I have to email back then. So just maybe think before you send the email. I don't mind replying back to people if anybody's having an issue. It's not a problem. It's just, you know, I can't be checking stuff for everybody, because suddenly I'll have 48 emails going out. So that's why if somebody emails in something like the other day, which was totally relevant, I put it up on the announcement board. It's just handier for me, and it stops all the other emails coming through. So I'm just trying to manage my own workload, basically. But if there's something you're stuck on, of course, reach out. It's not a problem at all. Anything else we need to say for the new people? Yeah, normally I don't record lectures, but I've made an exception in this instance because there's somebody in the class who has an issue, and they have pins in their arms and they can't write. God bless them. So it's thanks to them. And Valerie normally is the person who's recording, but tonight I'll give it a go. I don't know if I'll be as good as Valerie. Now, if it interferes with my Wi-Fi, I will just stop recording, because there's no point. We'll be going over and back forever in a day, and nobody wants to be here past 10 o'clock, definitely. I don't think there's anything else. Did anybody have any issues or anything before I dive in? Or is everybody okay? Okay, great. Okay. So we'll make a start. It's a mix of, again, I suppose, theory and practical. So we'll have some fun things to do tonight, hopefully. I mean, I love it all anyway, but hopefully you're all starting to really enjoy it as well. So I was thinking during the week about a couple of things, and I said to you all last week, you know, as a designer, I'm constantly carrying notebooks and things around with me, and I'm taking photos and I'm writing things down, and maybe I'm sketching things or whatever. And that was a recommendation I made to everybody last week, so particularly for the new people. So I did actually see a couple of really interesting things this week. Now, I'm not going to record this, but hopefully I will get to screen share it with you just to let you see. So the first thing that I saw, which I thought was really good, and maybe if you guys could, you know, as you go through the weeks, maybe keep an eye out. And if there's something you see that you think is a great idea or really innovative, and come in and share it, because the whole thing is, you know, we all learn from each other, and it's lovely to be inspired, and it kind of gets your creative juices flowing. So the first thing I saw, which I'll screen share in a moment, is a supermarket, and they've launched it out across the Netherlands, who have introduced this thing called a slow lane, which I absolutely love. So it's for people who are lonely. Originally, it was for people who were older, so that they could take their time going through the cash registers and they could have a chat. And now they've rolled it out. Anybody who wants to go through the process slower and can talk to people can do it. So I thought that was really good. I'll see, can I screenshot now? 1 second, free, or screen share, I should say. Okay, this is it, I think. Yeah. Can everybody see the screen? Just somebody gives me a little chat.
Yeah,
that would be
I can
great.
see that. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. I just need one. Okay, here we go. And hopefully you can hear it as well. Thought that was so good. What did you think?
Such a good idea.
Isn't it?
Yeah, because so many places have been taken out of our communities, post offices, pubs, places where people did socialize, and there is a lot of loneliness.
Yeah.
It's
There is. And I think, sorry, go on. Who's that?
probably me, Hugh. I think it's a ferocious leap for somebody to put themselves in that particular aisle as nearly as an admission that they're alone or lonely. That's a huge jump. But having said that if you are lonely or if you are suffering from solitude, the only way to address it is to acknowledge it and come back, back, probably the wrong word, but certainly work against it. I think a lot of people, particularly men, would. If I can tell a very, very quick story.
Do please, because I love when people share, and that's what this group is meant to be, because that's what inspires people, so share away.
Well, last week
I'll start recording actually, Hugh. Are you okay if I record?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's nothing.
Yeah, here goes. Valerie, you could be back on now any second, but here it goes.
Yeah. Last week I was at my Uncle Dan's 90th birthday party. And my Uncle Dan is my father's brother. My father, and in fairness, most of his brothers have passed away at this stage. There's only a couple of brothers left. But that was his 90th birthday. And this other guy, his buddy, came to the birthday. And it was a joint birthday. And his buddy is Jim. And Jim and my Uncle Dan were born on the same day. And they went to school together. And in keeping with a lot of people that generation, they left school about 13 or 14. And pretty much their paths diverged and they never saw.
Yeah.
For my uncle's 80th birthday party, which was 10 years ago, Jim suddenly popped up out of the blue and rang my Uncle Dan. He says, "Look, Dan, do you remember me?" And my Uncle Dan, like a true Ryan, lied through his teeth and said, "No, yes, of course I do," but couldn't place him because it was 60 years since he'd seen him, really. But long story short, he said to Dan, he says, "Dan, as you know, I'm married, but my wife passed away lately, and I've no children, and I've no one to celebrate my 80th birthday with. And I remembered that we were born on the same day. So is it okay if I celebrate my 80th birthday with you?" And my Uncle Dan, the good man that he is, says, "Yes, of course." So they've celebrated the last 10 birthdays together, including last week, which was their 90th birthday. And
wow.
Yeah, this guy, I don't know this guy Jim at all. And I'm quite close to my Uncle Dan, but he sang Danny Boy and dedicated it to my Uncle Dan. and when the line, and I don't know the song terribly well. I wanted him to sing, but Danny Boy, I love you so. He was holding my uncle's hand, my Uncle Dan's hand, and I just thought, my God, like I barely talk to my friends, and here's people from a generation, born in the 30s, who are comfortable enough with each other's company to reach out and say, "Look, I am lonely. I've no one to spend a birthday party with. Can I, piggyback on yours?" I just thought it was a lovely story.
Yeah, that's a fabulous story.
Yeah, such a nice idea, and thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing it. I think like loneliness is through it. Just the reason I picked this was we did an exercise in class last week, and one of the groups came up with this fantastic idea, and they were applying it to loneliness within communities. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, we're on the thread. I'll just share it, and I think it's just so important, and it's good to be mindful. And the other point there, Hugh, that you made, which actually is something I'll be talking about in this session as well. You were saying about, I'm not sure how brave you'd have to be to go into that line. And that's exactly the sort of insight that you would look for when you're designing something. So actually that was a great exercise in that. Yeah, it was such a brave thing to do. Now, I have another one, which is a brilliant example of a company that really, really understands their market customer, their segments, and their actual customer that they're going after. So I'll try sharing this one now. Where are we? Sorry, now one, guys. I think this is it here. I have two open, so I'm hoping I'm going to open the right one for you. This is it. Okay. This just completely blew my mind. So this is a chair, a gaming chair, basically. And I just thought it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. I just thought it was so innovative. This is a photo of it, just in reality. And then here's another photo of it. I just thought it was such an amazing design. I definitely would be a sucker for this. I thought it was incredible innovation. I've never seen anything like that. And this, then I'll see, can I share their website actually with you, because they're really, really good at, as I say, knowing their market and knowing who to, how to target them or whatever. It's really, really good. Great comments coming in. I need this chair for my Blackboard online lectures. I know, Derek, I was the same. They just have me straight away. I just thought it was an incredible design. I just couldn't believe it when I saw it. Just that I have to show the guys this. Okay, so try showing you this other one then. Where are they? So this is their website. So I just thought really interesting, because one of our lectures is about marketing, and this is a brilliant example of a company that really, really knows and understands who they're selling to, and they're creating products. They're high enough price point, but they're really cool products, and it elevates the gaming experience. So I just thought it was so good. So it's worth having a look at them in your own time when you get a minute. So they're Cluvens, CLUVENS.com. I thought it was really good. How do we feel about that design?
I think I definitely have a few people fighting over it here. Anyhow, we'd have to buy a few.
One for everybody. I know they're absolutely incredible, aren't they? But it's just so innovative. I just thought it was a really great innovation design, and knowing the customer, I thought it was brilliant as well. So, okay, hopefully now you guys can see the actual lecture notes, can you? I think. And we'll go through those. Okay, so tonight we're going to look at some sustainable strategies, the triple layered business model. I think we might have briefly touched on that last week. Thank you, whoever that is. We're going to look at practical strategies, how do you actually go about doing it? And then we're going to look at our Miro framework. Connie, what was the price point of Scorpion chair? I think that one I was looking at was $4,000, Connie. So it goes between, I think, 2.9 and 4 grand or something like that. But again, they know their market, and gamers usually have great jobs. Yeah, I know, Mark. I take two, they're really good. Okay, so sustainable design, where do we start? So again, I suppose for the people that weren't here last week, it's really, it's easy to get paralyzed when you look at the whole thing, because particularly for the new people, if you look back at last week's lecture, we only have one planet. There's a lot going on and there's a lot going wrong. So we really have to make a change. But the main point is just start somewhere. The most important thing is that we start somewhere. So hopefully in this evening's lecture, things will start to trigger in your own brains for your own businesses and different organizations that you're working on, where you'll start to, slowly ideas will start to come in, and you can think about where you might be able to apply that idea, or it might just trigger a new idea totally for you. But the main thing is, don't get paralyzed. Just pick somewhere and start there, okay? Because it is easy to get paralyzed. So I think we maybe briefly introduced this last week. So I suppose for the new people as well, the economic model up until this point in time is all about profit. And so it's take, make, and destroy model, basically. So we're now trying to look at a circular type system. So it's a closed loop type system. So we're looking at more than just the economic benefits or, the profit only model. So we're looking at how the business or the product impacts the environment around us. So we're trying to minimize impact in all cases. And how do we measure that? We're trying to look at as well how we impact the people around us. So social, how does our business or our product benefit our people and our communities? And some really interesting case studies coming up over the next few weeks, actually, which I think you'll enjoy. So with some inspiration. So you're looking at not just profit, you're also looking at planet, which is the environment, and then people, which is social. So they're the three things you should be thinking about. And when you account for all three, or you have a plan or model that works considering all those three items, then you have something that's actually sustainable, where the three of those actually meet. So you're aiming for a balance that benefits society, the environment, and financial well-being. Okay, so actually that just reminds me, when I was talking about your business models last week, that's your base point. So for your end project, you are going to start at the base point. So wherever you are at this moment in time, it doesn't matter, that's just where you are, and that's the starting point. And what I would say to you is start working on the framework this week and do a bit of work on it every week, and your end project then will be much easier, and you'll be able to show the journey of where you came from, where you are now. You went through all the processes, you applied all these different models and frameworks and theories, and hopefully at the end of it, you'll have something that really works for your organization, and that's really innovative for you. So everybody's not going to have the same project. Everybody's not going to go through the same process. You will all be using the same framework, but you'll come up with different ideas. And the main thing is that you show the innovation through it. So just to say that while I thought of it. So this slide here really is the start of where you're starting to think differently. So at the moment, again, you will be familiar with the business model canvas, which, as we've said, really just focuses on the economic model. It's all about the money coming in and going out. So now what we're looking at is we have an economic layer model, and we also have a social layer that goes economic, environmental, and social layers. So we have 3 layers of the business that we're looking at. And the whole thing interacts. So exactly as your regular business model, which is just looking at the economic layer, connects and all the different components are connected to each other, it's exactly the same with the other 2 layers. And then if you've done it correctly, all of the different models will work together because they're all interconnected. So by developing environmental and social layers, we're really making sure that everything connects together and that we are reducing our environmental impact where possible, and we're creating value for society. And for the people that we, our stakeholders, basically, we're creating value for them. Now, you might want to start thinking about raw materials, scarcity, the demand for raw materials, particularly if you're thinking about different products. You will be thinking about emissions. You're going to be thinking about the risks that are involved, maybe with making some of these moves, depending on what it is that your project is going to be on. We're also going to be thinking about how do we conserve and improve our natural, social, and financial resources, and how does it all work together within our core business model. So again, as I said, we're not just looking at the economic side of it. So really what we're trying to do here is bridge innovation with the business model development. That's what we're looking at. So this is your regular business model that you will all have seen. Actually, is there anybody who has not seen a business model canvas, just in case? In the room, just stick it in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just assume everybody has seen it. Okay, great. I think everybody's seen it. So this is the regular business model canvas, and this is probably what you have, or some form of it at this moment in time, where you were looking at how your business was going to come together, what your value proposition was, the different customer segments, etc. So this one that's on the screen at the moment, we've used Nestle as a model to explain the triple layer business model. So this is their regular economic model, the same as your one. So they're partners with the coffee machine manufacturers. Their core activities are marketing, the production of the actual coffee, logistics. What resources do they require? The distribution channels, their patents on lots of their systems, their branding, the production plants. Their value proposition is high-end restaurant quality espresso at home. And if you look at their marketing, that's what they're trying to get across. They have a really good customer relationship because they have a membership club. The channels that they sell through, their website and mail order, they have different branded boutiques, call centers, and then they obviously have retail centers as well. And then their customer segments are broken into two. So they have the office market and households. So just typical consumer. So B2B and B2C. And then their costs are coming from marketing, manufacturing, and distribution channels. That's their core costs within the model. And then the revenues are their capsules in the main, and other revenue is with machines and accessories. So this is something that you guys are used to seeing, and most of you will have been working on this with Padder, your last module. Is it okay if we've completed already? Yeah, that's fine. It's no problem at all. Jackie, it's really, as I say, it's a base point. So you'll see what I mean now when I go on to the next slide. So this is a version of the business model canvas. It's an environmental layer. So what we're looking at here is things that relate to the environment. So basically carbon footprint, that's what we're trying to measure. How do we reduce our carbon footprint? So I thought this was a really good little model for you guys to use and to keep in your head when you are going through your projects, because the whole idea is that you're making something through innovation, you're making it sustainable. So these are like the key headings that really you need to think about when you're looking at changing a business model. So like the functional value describes the focal points of the service. So what we're looking at here was the espresso coffee. And so you have to put some sort of figure on it. So that was multiplied by the amount of consumers over the period of a year. And that particular figure then was the figure that was used to base the carbon footprint off for everything else. The materials component is an extension of the key resources of the business model canvas. And the production component then is the same really as the key activities from the business model canvas. So here you're looking at where you're transforming raw materials into something that's of higher value, usually a product. So you need to think about there what activities have the highest impact environmentally. And the whole idea is through this working through these different boxes, you'll come up with a plan on how you can reduce your carbon footprint for whatever your project is. The supplies and outsourcing section, then that's everything else really that isn't the core business. So again, you might be looking at their water, it could be utility services, the energy for processes as we have there for Nestle. So whatever is relevant to the project you're working on. So distribution, if we look at that, then what percentage is that of our entire carbon footprint? So you're going to be thinking there about transportation, logistics, the fuel that we use, the distance that we traveled, maybe the weight of the goods might be another thing that you would actually look at there. The use phase, that relates to the end user. So what's the impact of the client partaking of your service or product? What impact does that have on the business's carbon footprint? So for example, what energy are they using? So in this case, obviously they're going to be washing their cups, so they're going to use water. They're going to need water and electricity to actually make the cup of coffee. They're going to be using the machine itself. You know, what else will they be using when they're, whatever you've developed, what, you know, what sort of energy levels are they going to have to use for that? The end of life then is really important. I think we touched on this last week as well. So you need to think about remanufacturing, repurposing, recycling, disassembly. If we're designing for any of these, if you remember from last week, you must design them in from the very beginning. Otherwise, it's like an afterthought. No problem, Max, you're fine. And, you know, is it incineration or is it disposal of the espresso coffee pods? So if we're looking at the coffee pods, we have to think about what are they made of? So we have to get rid of both the spent coffee and the aluminium. So just thinking about all these things, you know, and then if we look at the environmental impact, so this is where you're looking at the life cycle analysis of the actual product. So what are you looking at there? You're thinking about carbon emissions, CO2 emissions. You're thinking about human health, the ecosystem, natural resource depletion. Do we need a lot of water? All these kind of things. So in the case of this client, the environmental impacts are the largest contributor. That's the problem area for them. So that's something that they have to look at as a company, because that area there is 46.6% of their carbon footprint. So the idea then is that they think about, right, how can we start reducing that? So that's why you need, you know, this whole idea of the baseline to see where you are and what you're measuring and what you're looking at and where you can cut back and what you can, you know, improve on. So the environmental benefits then is really an area for you to explore. How can you improve your product or service? Where can you strip out the carbon? Where can you reduce your impact? Can you maybe swap one thing out for another or change a process? That would be a better way of doing things. So that's what that particular section is. So it's based on the business model canvas, the exact same process, but you're just looking at different items to measure the carbon footprint. That's exactly what you're doing there. And then the other layer, as we were talking about, is the actual social layer. So what value are we creating socially, if any? And I've often gone into companies and I'll be asking them about, you know, okay, usually going in with a marketing head on, what's our CSR policy? Do we have one? No. What have we done that's good for society? And some of the big ones have done absolutely nothing. It's just shocking, and they get away with it because they're so big and they felt like, oh, they didn't have to. But with the drive now from consumers, every business really has to look at this and see where can they make an impact or how can they work with people. So we need to think about social value and how do we create that. That's the key thing here, right? So in the case here, it's to enhance what they actually have on their website is to enhance the quality of consumers' lives every day, everywhere, by offering tastier and healthier food and beverage choices and encouraging a healthy lifestyle. So everything kind of filters down from that statement. Looking at the employees, so employees are core features within a business, obviously. So things you're looking at there, you're thinking about diversity, you're thinking about ethnicity, equality, gender pay gaps, all that kind of thing. That's what you're considering there. For governance, that relates to the decision making policies of an organization. So, what's the ownership model? Is there a hierarchy within the company? How transparent are we? How do we make our decisions? Usually you'd have a corporate governance pack. Most companies would have them at this stage, or are meant to have them, or will be working towards them. Particularly if you're a big company and you have shareholders, it's all about being transparent. The likes of the days of the newspaper barons are well gone. It's all about avoiding groupthink. How do you prove that you have a diverse board and that you make those decisions taking into account, you're getting information from all the stakeholders. So it's a really important area. The local communities in particular, they're really, really good with how they work within their local communities, because they have great relationships within the supply chain, and they have education courses for their coffee farmers. They do micro-credential courses, so they really work on the relationship with their suppliers. So maybe that's something you could think about doing as well. They have a really good CSR policy, and they have a culture of accountability and transparency actually as well. So they're a good company to look at. In terms of the scale of outreach, these are a huge company. So in one way, it's easy for them. They have a lot of outreach, but, you're thinking about how can I reach, or how can I expand out whatever it is that I'm trying to do as a program? Is there a way maybe I can partner with somebody? It depends again on what type of company you're in and what it is that you're trying to do within your own project. So for the end user, how does what you're doing benefit them? So this is, I suppose, similar to the value proposition. Obviously, they're going to get a caffeine boost, warmth of good product, supporting, all these coffee farmers, and they get a great taste, etc. The social impacts then, what are the social costs of an organization? So here, potential caffeine dependency, I'm definitely one of those. Potential displacement of traditional farming practices and crops. So that's a very real issue that they have to consider when they're looking at extending out their supply chain. And then the social benefits. So how do we benefit society? So really good at community engagement, very good at improving the quality of life of their stakeholders. So, what do we bring to the table? Really, that's the question for that box. Very good with personal development of farmers through their training programs. So a really good company to look at. And I think when you look back through the different models and the whole thing comes together, you can see how they're all interlinked, and how it's much more than just an economic model when you look at all three areas together. So these are the key areas you need to be thinking about for your two individual assignments actually, but in particular for your final project, okay? So eco-design then, where do we start? And if you remember, last week we were saying that 90% of executives will say that sustainability is really important, but only 60% of them have incorporated sustainability into their strategy. So it's a big growth area, and as we said last week, it's something that we really have to look at. So really, sustainability supports the product's life cycle in a circular economy perspective by saving and recycling at maximum naturally resources. And things that we can look at include product service systems models, producer stewardship. I have an explainer for these on the next slide. Dematerialization. We can look at remanufacturing, recyclability, repairability, reusability, disassembly, systems change, longevity, efficiency, modularity, influence, equity, and then completely disruptive design. So what do all of these mean? So product service systems is where you shift from selling products to providing a service and an experience. So if you remember Rolls-Royce from last week, and for the new people, if you have a look at that, they're the masters at doing this. Product stewardship is where manufacturers take responsibility for the entire life cycle, and they're promoting sustainable design. GlaxoSmithKline are quite good at that. They're really involved with water, to do a lot of work with the preservation of water. So that would be a good example of that. Dematerialization, where can we reduce material and energy inputs in production? And again, in processes is another way to ask that question. So how do we get the same results with fewer resources? Patagonia is a good example of that as a company. Remanufacture, how do we restore used products to a like new condition, extending their lifespan and reducing weight? I think extending their lifespan is a key thing, because we've just gone through this horrific phase of electronics in particular, where, you know, they don't seem to last any longer than a year or two. When you think about dishwashers or washing machines, you know, so why is that? We need to look at things like that. Again, Rolls-Royce are very good at remanufacturing their older products, older parts, components, I should say. Disassembly is where you break down products into different components, and then you're going to reuse them or recycle them or upcycle them. So that's supporting resource recovery. When you are looking at disassembly, to do it correctly, you really do need to design that in from the very beginning if you're looking at product design. So the whole idea is that you design out the product, whatever it is, but you're also designing it so that it can be disassembled in a certain way and reused in another way. That's how you get the best results from that. It's very difficult to do it if it's like an afterthought. One thing that comes to mind, but it's probably not great for the environment really, is I see a lot of people, you know, with older washing machines, and they're using the drums of them to create user campfires and things like that. That's a disassembly on a very simple level. So systems change. A lot of you might be looking at this if you're not product based. So how do you rethink a process? That might be something you're thinking. Longevity. Do we design products for longer lifespans? Reducing replace generation. I think that is of our generation actually. Efficiency, how do you optimize the resource? So maybe for your project, you might be thinking of looking at a certain area as their product, and how can you're going to look at it at this moment, and there's, you know, ABC wrong with it. Well, how do I take that, and how do I waste or take out the so think of lean manufacturing maybe as a process. Modularity, so interchangeable components. Is there anything you can do there? Could be the same thing for a service as well. Facilitating repair, maintenance, resource efficiency. Again, Rolls-Royce comes to mind there. Influence, can you shape consumer behavior and preferences to encourage sustainable choices and practices? So a good example of that is, if you remember last week, we spoke about after the Irish fashion designer. That's a really good example of that, where they're educating the consumer about the circular economy and, you know, why it's a good way to buy your clothes and how to resell them, and keep them in the loop, basically. Equity, consider fairness, inclusivity. That's a huge area, as we discussed last week. And social responsibility in design and promoting social sustainability. And then, is there something disruptive? Now, it's very difficult to come up with something that's completely disruptive, but that's not saying you can't do it. It is difficult. So is there something that you could completely challenge the current thought, whether it's a process or a product, and maybe you could come up with something that's completely unique and innovative that would address sustainability challenges? There's nothing to say that you can't. So they're kind of the core strategies. So just looking at them, I suppose, a bit deeper, what it comes down to in plain English is, what are we trying to do? We are trying to minimize the negative environmental impacts. So whatever you're working on, these kind of 6 points here really are your key touchstone, I suppose, the best way to put it. You're trying to enhance the well-being of individuals and communities. So how might you do that within the project that you're working on? We do it through intentional choices throughout the design journey. So whether I'm designing a process or a framework, so a process, a good example of that actually is a supermarket that we were looking at there. And, you know, you're thinking this is a great idea, this is going to work, and it does work for a lot of lonely people. But as Hugh said, one of the things that we need to consider there is, well, how brave do I have to be to join that line? You know, so I hadn't actually thought of that. So that was a great insight. So that's something then you'd have to take a step back and go, right, well, how do we take any sort of negativity out of the experience? How do we design that out? How do we make it so that it's not so us and them? You know, a bit like the disability stuff that and inclusion that we were talking about last week. How do we reduce resource consumption? Sorry, Nuala, does our product have to satisfy all 6 points through the project? I think it depends what you're working on. And I always feel, you know, you have to start somewhere, right? So if you're working on something that's really big, and it's probably not going to be possible to look at all those 6 points. So I think just do your best. I'm really hoping that you're applying it to real life scenarios if you can, because that's where you're going to get the best value out of it. And if it's a real life scenario, hopefully you should have had a really good impact, whatever you decide to test or do throughout the project. I hope that answers the question. It's the impact. Just think impact. What is the impact of this? What's the impact when somebody's reading this? Does it come across like, actually, this was really innovative? That's what you need to think about when you're putting your work together. Reduce resource consumption. Yeah. So promote renewable energy use, foster circular economy practices by focusing on long-term benefits for current and future generations. So again, you need to be thinking longevity. Longevity, it's not like next year and the year after. This is way into the future, or as far as you can go with what you're working on. And then you need to balance the economic, environmental, and social factors. Okay, so what are we trying to do? How do we do it? And we do it by focusing on. Really, that's your plan there. If you follow that, you can't really go wrong. Is everybody okay with that? Now, there are, on the next few slides, some examples that I've put in that I think, hopefully, again, really I put them into, hopefully inspire you or whatever, get you thinking maybe about your own situation. So one practical strategy is passive design techniques. So that's to do with buildings where we strategically orient them so that we're optimizing natural light and airflow. We reduce the energy consumption. We minimize the need for mechanical systems, and all of that reduces a carbon footprint. So that's one example. We could think about energy efficient technologies, might be a route that we could take. And how do we do that? Okay, let's just look at LED lighting, intelligent insulation, efficient HVAC systems. So these will help us lower our energy usage. They will lower operational costs, and as a result, they lower our carbon emissions. So it doesn't have to be, you know, something very detailed. There are ways that you can start and make a difference. Sustainability materials. So maybe we would think about prioritizing locally sourced eco-friendly materials. Low embodied energy. So what that means is it's related to construction materials. So a low embodied material would be like a concrete block or a timber. A high embodied material would be steel, because a lot goes into the production of steel items. So that choice reduces the environmental impact. It supports responsible resource management and the principles of a circular economy. We might think about water conservation, as we saw there with GlaxoSmithKline. So is there something we can think about? Innovative rainwater harvesting systems to minimize our water consumption. So by doing that, they contribute to water resource conservation, and it'll also alleviate the pressure on local ecosystems. Maybe that's something we could look at. We look at things like green infrastructure, so living roofs, vertical gardens, any porous surfaces that can enhance urban biodiversity. And I have some examples of that coming up actually. Can we look at maybe stormwater management, thinking about urban development and an ecological balance? So maybe, I'm not sure how firm you are on your projects as of yet, but maybe you could look at your office layout and how that works, and how could I make that more sustainable in an environmentally friendly way. So there's lots of different things. I suppose in one way I'm giving you free creative reign on the project. You can pick whatever you want to work on. So it can be a product, a service, it could be a building, it could be an actual process or a business model, whatever you want to work on. You can use the framework that I'll explain to you in a bit to go through. So it's the same framework, and you just pick whatever it is that you want to work on for that, okay? But what I would say to you on it is think on it, probably make your mind up this week, I'd say, because the faster you get working at it, the easier it will be for you. It's very hard to do it kind of last minute. Think about zero waste design. So how do we get rid of waste? Can we design a disassembly of something, recycling, upcycling? How can we integrate the circular economy in what we're doing, basically? So then other examples, we have adaptive reuse and retrofitting. Maybe that's something you could think about, where we have an existing structure and we reduce the environmental impact by repurposing and preserving it. That lowers resource consumption. We can look at our carbon footprint reduction through renewable energy sources. Can we optimize transportation logistics? Maybe that's something you could look at to minimize the carbon footprint of projects. That's the other thing. I'm assuming everybody has a business or an organization, you know, something real that they can work on. If you're in a position that you're not really sure, or you mightn't have something definite, maybe you could pick something to look at. So something within your environment, that's okay too. Just to say what I thought of it. Thinking about community engagement. How can we involve the local communities in our design process? How can we create projects that benefit them in the long term? So your community could be your stakeholders within your business, or they could actually be stakeholders within a community. So we know community engagement enhances social sustainability, and obviously it supports collective well-being. And you'll see as the weeks go on, the more of that you have, those companies are really sustainable and very wealthy companies going into the future. We could look at biophilic design. So if you remember from last week, an example of that we had was the bullet train in Japan, where the inspiration was from the bird, if you remember, and they adopted the train. So the other way we could look at that is incorporating nature into the design of buildings is another way to do it, to enhance people's well-being, creativity, and connection with the environment. So that fosters a healthier and more productive environment for people. The life cycle assessment then is a really important thing that we would look at, in particular for products. So what's the environmental impact throughout the product's life cycle? So that would help us then to make decisions where we can minimize the ecological footprint, and we can promote sustainable practices. We obviously want to design for accessibility and inclusivity. That goes without saying, I think, at this stage. So, you know, design for everybody and design for all, as we were talking about last week. And then I suppose the last three, if we think about socially responsible sourcing, so within our own organizations, where can we prioritize ethical sources? How do we support fair labor practices? And I mean, I heard of something this week, which I won't go on to, but I cannot believe the way a particular company who's quite big and will be very well known is treating its staff. I just cannot get over it in this day and age. So, you know, labor practices are not something that are limited to developing countries. There are shocking things, unfortunately, going on around us all the time. So maybe that's something you might decide to have a look at. You know, and if people are happy within working for you, working for your company, it benefits everybody. education and awareness. So maybe you could think about informing or educating your users, your end users, your audience, your customers about sustainable features and practices that are associated within your design, whatever that may be. How are you going to do that? Maybe it becomes one of your content pillars, as it was with the 4After last week. And that creates, a deeper understanding of environmental impact from your customers. And also it's a way to position yourself within your marketing as a thought leader within the space. So I would definitely, I think, look at that and consider, can you weave that into whatever it is you're working on? Obviously then longevity and timeless design. So you need to think about whatever you're designing, it needs to be both, as we said last week, aesthetically pleasing, so it looks great, but also needs to be functional. I was at a funeral recently and somebody we know died quite suddenly. He was a designer as well, a product designer, industrial designer, I think was the phrase, when he was studying. And his sister was telling me this lovely story of, when he came home and he lived down the country and they were like, so what are you studying? And the way he described it, I thought was brilliant and very relevant here, where he goes, well, if you want a milk carton, I will design that milk carton to look absolutely amazing, but also to be highly functional and will never spill a drop of milk. And I just thought it was the best description ever of industrial design. So think like that. How do I make whatever it is I'm working on look great and work great? Okay, whatever it is. So thinking about real examples then, where we can see some of these models in action. So this is one. So this is the Shanghai Tower in China. So this tower twists at 180 degrees. And the reason, so it twists at that angle as it rises, basically. So the reason that it does that is it reduces the effect of the wind. So the three problems the architects had with this particular area was, one was wind, the second was earthquakes, and the third, I think, was clay. So they designed it so that, like a tree, so that it rotated. And there's 9 different sections to it. So they're like the branches. And as a result of designing it with that 120-degree twist, they reduced the construction bill, and I think they reduced it by $52 million, and they reduced the effect of the wind by up to 24%. So like just an incredible design. So the core base of it is concrete, and then the 9 different sections are steel. So it's really steel braces. It's a really good building to have a look at. It's very inspirational. So lots of solar panels, they have self-balancing water systems, eco-friendly materials in construction. It collects and reuses its wastewater. So that means then it has a combined cooling and heating power system, which is really great. It's wrapped in 2 layers of glass, which gives this natural cooling and ventilation. And then there's 200 wind turbines spinning at the top of the tower. So obviously these are the world's tallest turbines. So they generate about 10% of the building's electricity. So can you imagine the architect when that spec came in? So probably all he was told is, we want something that's very sustainable. It's very green, and we have these issues where it's an extremely windy site. There's an issue with the clay, and it's also in an earthquake zone. So I suppose what I want to say here is, think big as well, which if you had Patter in section 1, which I think he did, you definitely be steering think big and think bigger. So whatever you're working on, as a designer, if you're going to be innovative, really you kind of need to push it to the nth degree. So multiply it by like 10 or 100 or whatever. So that's what that architect did here in this case, and they come up with a fantastic design. It's one of the tallest buildings in the world. This is another really interesting one as well. So this is the Bullitt Center in Seattle. So I really love this building because it's a giant science experiment. That's what it is. And you can look at their website and you'll find out lots of really interesting information about it. But it was designed to be the greenest commercial building in the world. And it's actually, I think in 2015, it was certified to be a living building. So what that means is it connects the inhabitants to air, light, food, nature, and community. So it's a really, really important building in the world of construction and sustainability. And all those areas that you can see on the left-hand side, radiant heating, walkability, solar panels, they're all the new technologies that were integrated within the building. So it's amazing to see the levels that they went to. And when you go to the website, you can click on each one of those and it will give you information about, for example, the windows and how they approach that problem and why the windows are so special. It'll show you the structural materials and heat recovery, ventilation. Really, it's an amazing building to look at. You can learn so much from what they're doing. And as I say, what I love about it is this is Dennis Hayes, who's the CEO of the foundation, and he treats it almost like a living lab. So I think this is a brilliant line that he has. And I suppose I'm trying to encourage everybody to be creative and just go for it. So what I love about him is he says, we integrated lots of leading edge technologies. If everything had worked perfectly, that might have meant we hadn't been bold enough. So, so for example, when they were putting all these new technologies in, including the toilet there, they had put in this, really green toilet, which I think was compost or something, but it didn't work. And they kind of persevered for 8 years, and then it decided, listen, this isn't working, and they just took it out and reverted back to, I think it's a vacuum type system or a traditional type system. So they're not afraid to experiment, try something, tweak it, reiterate it, try it again. So all the things we were talking about last week. So it's a really good example of architecture being very brave and just trying things, basically, so really that building is designed to show what's possible for the future of sustainable buildings. So it's a very, very important building. And the idea is it's an educational center, and they want to increase the pace of change for sustainable buildings around the world, basically. That's what they want to do. They're all about promoting urban sustainability. So it's a really interesting project to have a look at. And then this one I really like as well. Some of you might have seen this. It's the Vertical Forest in Milan. So this is designed by Stefano. I can never pronounce his name. I think it's Buriar, I think it is. So basically, this is a biophilic design. So the concept for this, what I loved is it's not a building. The brief was to build something that would encourage wildlife back into the city. That's what it was. So basically, they built this building, and then they also integrated a lot of planting within it. So it has 2 towers. So they're 80 and 112 meters high, and they have 800 trees. So 480 first trees, and then 300 in the second stage, 15,000 perennials or ground covering plants, and then 5,000 shrubs, all within that one building. So again, it's a really important building, and really good to have a look at that. So what that did was it repopulated the city with wildlife and birds. It created a whole new ecosystem, an urban ecosystem, with all the different types of vegetation that allowed the wildlife back into the city. So I think just thinking outside the box, what's possible, the imagination that was required to come up with that design, and thinking about how, if you're designing for a city, you usually have something completely different in your head, but how he was so clever as to think about, right, let's build a forest, into this building. It's just an incredible design. It's a magnet for recolonization, actually, of the city by vegetation and animal. So it's the whole purpose of that building really was to allow vegetation to grow. That's what it was about, to reduce carbon footprint as well. It's an amazing example, isn't it? And quite a nice place to live, I'd imagine. So it's a home for trees that also houses humans and birds. That's how the architect refers to it, which I thought was really lovely as well. Again, just, apart from the mineral facades in glass or stone, this is a plant-based shield. So it doesn't reflect or magnify the sun's rays. It actually filters them. So what that does is create this internal microclimate. So there's no harmful effect to the environment. And at the same time, that curtain then, it regulates the humidity. So it's producing oxygen and it's absorbing CO2 and the microparticles. So it's really actually quite good for the environment. And it was voted the best tall building worldwide for 2015. So really interesting building, I think. And then another example within the cities, just a way of bringing energy efficiency in. So I think COP21 took place in Paris again in 2015. It's amazing the way a lot of this stuff happened in 2015. So they wanted to renovate the lighting on one of the most famous streets. They wanted to make a statement for COP15. So it's 3 kilometers long, this particular street. And what they did was they left the lovely old light shades because they have a conservation order on them, but they replaced those with LED lighting. And it looked amazing. And as a result of it, they cut the energy bill by 84%, which is an incredible feat as well. So I suppose just looking at the design, does it look good? Yes, it looks great, but it also is cutting our emissions. It's cutting our energy use. It's cutting our energy bills. That's a big win. Okay, so I think, again, looking at cities and places that are very grey and uninspirational, if you're looking at your project going, where will I start or how do I start it? Just even picking 1 or 2 of the things that we've looked at already tonight and starting from that actual viewpoint. So this is also Skull Schrader, who are the guys who did the specialist lighting in Paris on the previous slide. They're a really good website to have a look at as well, because what I thought was really interesting about them is within their marketing, they have it embedded across their website. So they have a section on sustainability. And then I thought that this was really nice, where they had together for our future, together for our planet, together for our people, and together for our community. I just thought it was really, really good marketing. And that's a demonstration of applying it within the core business model. So really, really good example. So I recommend that you have a look at that site as well. What do you think about that, actually, with regard to their marketing there? Hopefully people are still with me, are they? Jacqueline is still with me anyway. What do you think of the buildings or what we've been looking at so far?
It's phenomenal, Ashton. The buildings are amazing. I'm sitting here thinking, Janie Mackers, I can't design anything. These are incredible. How do even people?
Oh no, you can though. Yeah, I mean they are incredible. But what I was hoping by showing you this stuff was
amazing.
It's inspirational.
Yeah, absolutely. Think outside the box.
Yeah, that's it, which was the whole reason we did the elevator exercise last week. And I have another one later on. Oh, really good. Thanks so much, Erica, for that. Opens the mind for sure, Max. Yeah. Mark, sketching design limits for what can be achieved or stretching. Yeah, definitely. Would be so interesting to be a part of something like that. But I mean, maybe there's something, Jennifer, I don't know, like there's a lot of you in this group, so there might be a way that some of you could collaborate together. I'm sure there is. So that would be an interesting conversation to have. Like I worked on something last year, a CSR project, and what happened was 1 glass of wine too many. That was the truth. But I was at an awards night, and a friend of ours had died of cancer a few years ago, and she was really brilliant at networking, and she had left this body of work behind her basically, and it was all over the place. An old Word PowerPoint files, just horrific. But anyway, we were all thinking about her and talking about her and thinking, God, it would be really nice to do something. And because, I'm designing stuff all the time, I just went, well, let's do it. Just get me the files and I'll put something together. So 3 companies came together and we all worked on it. And what came out of that was we all just worked on it with love, to be completely honest. But we took her work, we did a big dedication at the front of it. We created this little workbook, and that was given out then at the Women in Business networking event, October, not this year, I think the year before. So it was an actual workbook that was of benefit to women in business that they could use and learn about networking, basically. So that was just over a conversation. So if some of you got together here, imagine what you could actually do. So I think it would be good to have those conversations and see. Yeah, bit intimidating. No, don't say that, Katrina. It's meant to be for inspiration, not intimidating. We'd be letting the imagination wander in all directions. Not just one person designed this. Yeah, that's the thing. Brainstorming session, Elaine, with lots of innovative ideas. That is the thing, right? So we'll see that now as we go through the process. So we're going to go through like a design thinking process, and that's what the framework I've designed for, is for, basically. Okay. Wine is a great, yes, it is. Yeah. Jennifer's up for it. If anybody wants to have a wine, you could have a wine event online, Jennifer, and maybe there's a few of there together that could work something. That'd be an amazing win, wouldn't it? So great, I'll keep going along. So yeah, The Edge. This now, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this, right? This is the greenest and most intelligent building in the world. So owned by Deloitte. So I actually love this because I suppose I'm a techie at heart, but there is a whole other side of it, I do wonder. But anyway, the entire building is connected to its staff, right? So the minute you come in and you park your car, the building through an app recognizes that you've arrived. It will find a parking space for you. It will prepare your favorite cup of coffee. Based on your schedule for the day, it will identify whether you need a small meeting room or the boardroom, and it will have the room booked for you by the time you get up there and have it set up. It will know whether you need a concentration room. It will know whether you need a sitting desk or a standing desk. It will adjust the temperature of the room to the temperature that you like to have it at, and it will have got to know you. So you might like your lighting a certain way, so it will have the lighting set up for you as well. So this building was awarded by BREEAM. Yeah, that's a good point, Mark. I hope Deloitte are part of their cybersecurity. So yeah, BREEAM has given it the highest sustainability score ever. This building has a 98.4% sustainability rating score. So again, I recommend you have a look at this because there might be some inspirational stuff in that. So it's using the information technology to shape the way we work and also to shape the spaces in which we work. So there's not a lot of meeting rooms in it. There's a lot of sofas and meeting areas, we'll say, where people can sit and stop and have a chat. And it's all about, I suppose, collaboration, as we were discussing, and coming up with different ideas. There's 28,000 sensors in the building. They have LED panels. So because they're LED, they only require a trickle of electricity. It's very, very light. Yeah, it is a whole other level of innovation, isn't it, Max? Yeah, it's amazing. And it's powered using the same cables. So the electricity runs through the same cables that they use for the internet. And the panels have lots of different sensors on them. So for motion, for light, for temperature, humidity, infrared, it's a digital ceiling, basically, that's what it is. So they created it a bit like your synapses in your brain. That's how this building operates. It's amazing. It's just an incredible building, and I think the way of the future. So it's built around the humans. So there's kind of the workspace, a little picture of it there. The really interesting thing here is a quarter of the building is not allocated desk space, which is really interesting, isn't it? So I think when we're looking at this, we're looking at the work of the future. And it's called I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce this. I think it's Het Nieuwe Werken philosophy is what it's called. So to break people away from their fixed locations and rigid ways of thinking. So the idea behind this, so kind of like when I was sharing with you when we first logged in, the couple of inspirational innovation that I had seen this week, I'm hoping that the impact of that is that your creative brain starts. Yeah, totally. That is the thing. Yeah, so definitely the whole thing is built around the human. That's, the good side of it. But the other side of it is, I suppose, the tracking of every move that you make. And as Nuala's saying there, Big Brother is watching you. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I look at this building and it's almost like an episode of The Terminator or something, isn't it? I'll be back.
Matrix is the one thing that's sprung into my head straight away.
You'd be a bit worried about what it's tracking, but I love the whole idea. But I just love that idea where you just roll up and everything's laid out for you. You don't even have to think about it. Mark, can see the opportunity to embed AI to improve building efficiencies over time. Definitely. And I think that's the scary part as well, because we need to be very careful, because AI are neural networks basically that can talk to each other. So that would be something we'd have to be very careful about. Jennifer, love how innovation is incorporated as part of what they do on a daily basis. Exactly. That's the whole thing. It is cutting edge. Yeah. I do agree about the tracking element. It's a little bit like we're robots. Yeah, I don't know if any of you have watched. It's just made me think about something. I think it's on Apple TV called Severance. Hugh Ryan, intellectual property hot rising. It definitely is. Severance, what I was thinking about was, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you watch it, not because you don't have enough to do, but it's very interesting, because the whole idea is that they sever your brain. And so you're in work and you just remember work things. And then you go down in the elevator, and as you're going down, you forget about work. You go out to your car and all you can remember is the outside world. I feel when I'm looking at this building, we're kind of heading towards that a little bit. Serious. Yeah. Be addictive. Come back. I think property, that's definitely what they're at. You like like you can't turn innovation on tap. It's tricky. But what you can do is inspire people to be creative so that they can tap in and out to the creativity. And that's exactly what this environment is at. It's called Wine, I like it. Adding a nice example is the new Indian Gold Exchange. It's the world's largest office building. Company I work for supplied some of the civil infrastructure. Oh, really interesting, Bevan. Maybe if you want to put the link in and we can have a look at that at some stage. It's featured on YouTube channel, the B1M. It's a great example of intelligent design and form balanced function. Brilliant. Maybe, yeah, if you're okay to share that and people could look at it then in their own time, it would be really good. So kind of up to this point, right, we have been looking at where it's at, really, right? So want to be healthier when they age. We have a lot more emerging technologies coming out, like even different treatments for cancer, etc. Thankfully, just being introduced at the moment. We've got socioeconomic changes, education platforms, healthcare systems. So we've lots of different things going on. And the sorry, this market is the fastest growing market. It's worth $8 billion. So there's a lot of money in this. So sorry, I'm talking too much again. The concept of retirement has been redefined. I love this. It's not age, it's stage, which is what we're thinking about, right? So if you think about 50 is the new 30 and all this kind of stuff, and anybody who's done any of my marketing stuff, the whole thing about advanced style is amazing. People are looking great now and looking after themselves much better as well. And with advances in medicine, etc., we're all having really good quality life. So the whole idea is that we're all going to live longer and live better. So we need to think about how might we design for this? What do we need to think about? So there's a movement that kind of started this whole thing where, the golden era of marketing, really, everybody wants to sell to, 36-year-olds kind of thing. But there's a huge market where we retire at 65 or 66 or whatever it is. We're living longer. I saw a woman on social media only last night, I think, and she was 92. I could not believe it. You would definitely think she was maybe 68 or something, just incredible. So, if you finish at 66, what are you going to do for the next 35 potential years or whatever, right? So there's a whole market there, a whole area that needs to be serviced with products and services. And how can we think about that? And as I was saying, around 2012, there's this famous photographer called Ari, A-R-I, Seth Cohen, and he's based in New York. And he was taking these amazing photographs of incredible people going around New York, daily lives, just all looked amazing. And they were all, you know, definitely, I'd say if you had anybody in their 60s, but 60s and above. And his whole point at the time was he felt, you know, there's so much ageism within society, and these people look amazing. They dressed incredible. They were still embracing life. They were still very involved with life and things around them, and very active. So he started documenting it, and it created a whole new movement called the Advanced Style movement. Look it up, hashtag Advanced Style. It became so big that some of the women he was photographing became so famous that they were actually flown to Selfridges a few years later for modeling assignments. And some of them have just huge careers. Everything's been relaunched again. So I suppose the whole point of that, there's a film about it, there's books about it, just really worth looking at. These are things we need to be thinking about. So last year in March, MIT hosted this brand new innovation lab, basically. So they called it PLAN, and which stood for Preparing for Longevity Advisory Network, which sounds a bit, I don't know how exciting it sounds, but anyway, we get the point. So the whole idea of this was they brought financial companies together who sold financial products. And they were looking at, you know, as we're all living much longer, we really need to look at the financial services industry and how can we design for that, because it's not just about the money. So they brought them through a design thinking process, basically through the eyes of the user, so the user journey. And what they figured out was that the whole financial services industry is going to change, because it's not just about the financial products anymore. They were going to actually become this sort of special advisory guidance service that would have to incorporate an awful lot more than just financial planning within it, because of the lifestyles that we're all living as we age now, and because we're all so much healthier, etc. There's much more than just finance about it. So it's really interesting to have a look. So this is a whole new industry. So the interesting thing about it was, again, thinking outside the box, they brought in their keynote speaker, who was Donna McNamara, and she's the vice president of Marriott Hotels, the global luxury and leisure sales at the Marriott International. That's actually her position. So she did a talk to them, and she was talking about how Marriott interact with the customer and how it's all about creating that emotional connection. And how they create a relationship. So I just thought it was so interesting, because the old financial services, even as we're sitting here talking today, they're quite rational, and it's all about efficiency. There's no real emotion in it. Whereas the new version of that, which is coming, is going to be all about the personal connection and creating relationships. It's about an experience and trying to help people live the best lives they can as they age. So we're pushing these financial advisory professionals towards much deeper conversations that they wouldn't normally have had. So lots of new markets. They're going to have to know about a lot more topics than just finance with regard to aging, so that they can create a new client experience. So the new product offering is now a next generation advisor, and they're building longevity teams and practices. Isn't it just incredible what's around the corner? So this is a whole new market, whole new industry that has yet to be tapped in. We're at the dawning of it. So definitely there are some people within this room that can actually tap into that. So I'm going to try playing this video now, where you can hear Dr. Joe talking, and I think it's really interesting. I think I might have him. I do. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, hopefully you can see that, and I'll press play, and hopefully you'll all be able to hear it as normal.
Is MIT still class participation is going to be 10% of your grade? My name is Joe Coughlin. I lead the MIT Age Lab. This morning, you heard about your health and what we're going to be doing to get you to live longer. You heard from Jim. God, you're an economist. I'm not sure whether I'm happy or depressed, but how you're going to spend your money. But I want to talk to you about the research we're doing in terms of what are you going to do with that time? Think about it. You're living longer. Our challenge now is how do we get you to live longer and live better? How do you cash in that longevity dividend? I want you to look at these distributed, but half of them. But start thinking about a 100-year life. What does that mean? How many, not jobs will you have? How many careers will you have? The people marching in the procession outside this room, how many careers will they have? Think of the technologies that have changed. When did a social media analyst become a thing? But it is now. How many times will my wife want to hear the same joke? Unlike engineering, that's really one part math and 2 parts technology. Demography is destiny. And I want you to start thinking now about a world that is headed towards 100 years. You heard earlier about the fact that we're not just aging, but frankly, we stopped having kids. By 2047, the entire world will have more people on the planet over 60 than so-called children under the age of 18. But at the Age Lab, and this is Lou Aaron, unfortunately he's gone now, but he was class of 40, physics. He participated in our 85+ lifestyle leaders. So if you're 85 and older, contact us. We love to talk to people that are those lifestyle leaders that actually give our students and researchers insight into the new technologies, way of life, and the like. The Age Lab brings in design, technology, and human behavior. Aging is a multidisciplinary sport. It is foolhardy to believe that only one discipline is going to invent life tomorrow. And by the way, if you like what I have to say, it's to their credit. This is my team of social scientists, engineers, and a variety of other things out there. If you don't like what I have to say, blame me. We talk about the environment, we talk about transportation, the future of the home and the like, and I'll touch on a few of those things today to show you some insights as to what MIT is doing to think about the future of life tomorrow. But I want to ask you, what is the most powerful technology in the world? We're sitting here at Tech Reunion. Shout it out, class participation. What is the most powerful technology in the world? Information. I heard genes over here. I'm going to challenge all of you, because I learned this as a student here many years ago, when I had hair, that the oldest technology in the world, the most powerful technology in the world, is not all the stuff we think about. Believe it or not, it's the oldest technology. It is the story. Think about what the story does. It explains why we do certain things, why we don't do others. It talks about the realm of possibilities and what's impossible in between. Think about those of you that are investment. You use the phrase, my investment thesis. No, it's not a thesis, it's your story. Well, here's a story for you. Old age is made up. It is. I have to tell you the truth, it's all made up. Do you know that British medical science in the 1800s, and it came across the entire country, North America, around the world, British medical science came up with this notion of vital force. You see, you were born, they said, with a certain amount of vital energy. You were imbued with this energy. And by the way, if you used it badly, which for those of you in the cheap seats meant anything fun, you drained down this energy. You were no longer a glass full, you were a glass half empty. Now, the thing about stories is they don't just explain things, they create language. And if you were so tired and you could not work, what would you have to do? You'd have to retire. And by the way, in the 1800s, early 1900s, there was no social safety net. So if you could not work, you went to another institution. You went to the alms homes, which over time, because if you didn't have family to support you, became senior homes. And don't you love the linear lines of stories? We go from retirement to poor home to senior home to funeral home. And by the way, only economists and doctors and policymakers could make the greatest success of humankind, longer life, into a problem to be solved rather than an achievement to be celebrated. So rather than thinking about global aging as an opportunity, we now have to really start rethinking about what do we do with all that time? The trouble is stories have real implications. Heinz Senior Foods, smart company. They said, well, gee, old people, let's see, they don't have teeth, they don't have taste. I know, we'll make baby food. That crashed and burned. Then there's this other guy, many of you probably know them, a contractor in California, said, well, okay, older people, let's see, after World War II, they have a lot of time, they've got pensions. What do we do with them? What do we do? I know, they can play. You see, we've been making up stories of what to do with this time. Not incorrect, but woefully incomplete. How about this system? The help, I fall and I can't get up. Profoundly rational. But think about the following. Only 35% of people over 75 believe that they are old, but 100% have a new face. It is not equitably distributed. These are outliers like all of you. But from Argentina to Chile to UK to US, these are people who define themselves as, or identify themselds as old, condition called.
And people, different thought leaders come up with different frameworks, and they're all basically around the same kind of process, similar ideas, as you'll see when we go through it. So let's just have a look at a few. So I, again, just put this in this week as well as last week, particularly for the new people. I just want to stress that when you're thinking like a designer, you really do have to come up with some wild ideas, and, you know, kind of start from there, really. Thinking about it takes time as well. It's not that you can do this very quickly, which is one of the reasons I'm saying to you to start with your framework this week, if you can, or definitely start kind of firming up on your ideas that you're going to try tackle, because you need time to think and tweak it and think about it and, you know, make changes. And the picture on the right, then you will go through this journey where, you know, you start off and you have this idea and you're really optimistic, but you'll find as you go through it, you're definitely going to hit some low points, but that's okay. The whole point is we need to take everybody's viewpoint on board, all the relevant stakeholders. So kind of as he was saying early on there tonight when we were looking at the slow cash registers, you know, he was saying about, well, how brave would you have to be to go into that? That's something, you know, you as a designer might go, oh God, you know, how am I going to deal with this? But that's just part of it. You just have to go through it. And you definitely need empathy, because you've got to be able to understand all the relevant stakeholders. You have to be optimistic, because if you're not optimistic, you're just not going to be able to get through the process. I think any designer you meet, you'll find they're usually optimistic people. You're iterating, which is, as we said, tweaking the process. You definitely have to be creative. And the one big thing I want to get across here, and we had, I suppose, an interesting little test from last week on this, which is ambiguity, right? So you have got to embrace and don't know where you're going to end up. Last thing about business model, people were in an ambiguous area. It's great.
You're starting to go in and out now.
So
Yeah.
just have-
You're breaking up.
Okay, right. You know what? I'm just going to log off and try logging back in again and see if it works. Okay.
Okay, yeah, we got that.
They refer to that as making it real. So it could be a prototype, and you test it and then you actually deploy the prototype. Stanford Design School, they refer to stage one as you empathize. So you empathize with the user, your, you know, the end user, whoever's going to use whatever it is they're building or trying to fix. And then you define the problem. You come up with ideas in stage two, and then stage three, you develop a prototype and you test the prototype. The Rotman Business School, they refer to stage one as empathy again. Stage two is where you come up with your ideas. And then stage three is where you are doing your prototyping and experimentation. And then Darden Business School look at it, they say stage one, what is? So what is the problem, or what's the issue that you're trying to fix? Stage two, they refer to it as what if. So all the processes, what if I do this? What if I do that? What if that happens? And then stage three, what wows or what works. So they're kind of different models. And then this is a very famous framework from the Design Council in the UK. So I suppose this has been around for years. I can't think of the year off the top of my head, but it's been around quite a bit. So the Design Council, they have an interesting website actually, developed this thing called the Double Diamond, which is what you're looking at on the screen. So they've broken the process into the first diamond is where you're discovering what the problem is or insight into the problem, and then you're defining the problem. And then the second diamond is where you develop out solutions and you deliver solutions that work. So in the discovery phase, if you look to the left there, that's where we have our divergent thinking from last week, where we're trying to understand the problem. So we're looking at the user, the environment, how the user behaves. So this is very much design focused, as in practically focused. What tools are they using? What's the decision-making process? And what you might use to help you within that process. You might do interviews with your stakeholders, you might do brainstorming, and you'll come up with some ideas. Then once you've got your insights, you will look at defining it, so narrowing down your ideas. This is our convergent thinking, again, if you remember from last week. So you look at the main challenges, and then establish a direction that you want to go. So you would do that probably with customer journey mapping, and you might use focus groups. So at this stage, then you will have identified exactly what the problem is, because you'll have done all your research and spoken to the stakeholders, and you'll put up some form of design brief. So then we move into the second diamond, where we're developing. So again, now we're looking at lots of different things. We're exploring and experimenting several solutions at this stage. We're coming up with lots of ideas. We'll test all these different ideas and get feedback on them. So at this point in time, you will have multiple concepts and prototypes probably. So in that particular stage, there's lots of creativity and innovation. So that's why every night we're on, I'm trying to inspire you with different things and fire up your creative brain. And then finally, when you're coming towards the solution, the deliver stage, that's where, again, you're convergent. So you're getting narrower. You've focused in on the most viable solution. And then you're usually doing up detailed designs for this solution at this point. And it's all about the execution, the delivery of the end design. You'll test it, it might be rejected, or you might have to tweak it, but then you'll finalize it. So it's pretty much there at this stage, and then it's launched. So this one is very much geared around product design, really. So this is a framework then, the design thinking process from the D School at Stanford. So you can see they're all quite similar. So they look at this, the difference with this one is it's very human-centered, and this process can apply to anything really. So again, they're focused on empathy with the end user. So you're really trying to uncover emotions and seek stories. So I keep referring to you, but it's just such a good point he made where, he was saying, okay, well, what about getting into that line? So what you would do there, you'd go and try and understand how that person was feeling. Why would they not want to get into the line? What was stopping them? And sort of you'd have questions like, so tell me how that made you feel, or what might put you off, or just tell me what the process is that you would use for that. Those kind of questions, and they're open-ended because you want to gather as many insights as you can. So that's what the issue then. So you reframe it and you do this thing where you create a human-centric problem statement. So an example of that might be something like increasing the accessibility of public transportation for individuals with disabilities to improve mobility and overall quality of life. So within that statement, the human is at the center, because we've said we are focused on solving a problem for individuals with a disability. So kind of like our bus example from the Normals, that was it, from last week, if you remember them. So that's what a human-centric statement is. You're trying to find meaningful surprises and tensions. So tension can actually be a really valuable driver for creativity and innovation, because it forces designers to stand back and come up with different solutions, taking everybody's views into account. So you have to try find a solution that works for everybody. So sometimes tension is not always bad. So just bear that in mind if you're working. Now, it says here, create low-res objects and experiences. So for the people who weren't here last week, we had an example where I think it was early on in the slides, there's just a picture and somebody's around on a board, lots of shapes. It's like a user interface. Create a prototype, just use it. So it does not have to be, no matter what you're designing, it doesn't have to be something that you've spent a lot of money on. A prototype, the more low res it is, the better, because you can find out faster how this is going to work, what people think about it, and what you might need to tweak. So the whole thing when you're designing anything is get feedback as soon as you can, and make the changes as fast as you can. So you do not want to, in any design process, go along, spend a lot of money designing out something and it's just not right. So that's why you focus on creating low res objects. So you might do role play to understand the context. That works really well. Sometimes we do that where, if we're designing a process, you're trying to understand, well, what's it like for that person if I want them to use this parking spot or come down the road a certain way or whatever, so you can learn a lot by doing role play as well. So again, working within your groups within the class is really good if you need to do something like that. Testing, then you're going to test it with customers. So at that stage, you'll be fairly sure this is what's going to work. You'll test it with customers to get, to refine it. And you'll probably learn even more, gain more insights there. And it's just always somebody that comes along with this brilliant nugget. And you're like, oh, if I could integrate that, this would actually be amazing. So, it might be something you haven't thought about before. And key point here is, if you're going to be creative and innovative, you just have to embrace failure. And I think a better way to look at it is, you're learning. It's not failing, it's learning. That's what it is. And once you kind of flip your brain around, you won't be afraid to try anything. I think just sometimes reframing it in your own mind helps. So don't be afraid if this is something you're thinking about doing in work. I've done a good bit of work with educators, and sometimes the environment can be political, we'll say. But if you accept that it doesn't matter, I'm going to try this, and at least I've tried and learned something from it, and I'll just tweak it. That's the approach to take, right? Last week, where I introduced this idea of the divergent and convergent thinking. So for the new people, really, you go through different thinking patterns, and this would be one of the key theories in design thinking. So there's a bit in the intro session that we did last week, and then this is probably the more detailed version that you're going to need anyway. So when our brains are working and we're thinking, what's the problem? What's the value you want to create? What are our assumptions? There's lots of thinking going on there, and our brain has almost gone into overdrive. There's so many different ideas, and that's called divergent thinking, right? So then at this point, you get insights that will help you to empathize with the end user. And if you think about at this point, what's missing, or what would the impact be if I could do this particular thing that I'm thinking about doing? So then your brain switches to convergence. So at this point, it's where you're tightening up on what you're thinking about, you're analyzing what you've researched, and you're prioritizing, where will I get the most impact? What's the most important thing? So at step 2, you will be defining the problem, or the opportunity, I prefer to call it, that you're solving, and the value you're going to create for future users. So then if we look, so we've created ideas, we're maybe looking at an initial prototype. We have a possible solution maybe at step 3. So we'll be refining it and developing it. What does it look like? And keep it on paper, no matter what you're trying to build, as long as you can. So again, you will go through lots of different ideas there. You'll be analyzing it, pulling out the most important ideas. You'll be getting user feedback on it. Are there any wows? If you can create a wow, like literally a wow is, people would just love it if you could integrate that within whatever you're developing. That's a wow. It is what it says on the tin. So eventually you get to your specific solution, where you test it, you iterate it, you refine it, you test it again, and eventually you come out with a specific solution. And at that stage, you might start thinking again, you know, God, in the future, is this something that needs to be worked on? Or you might have the ultimate solution. So I always say to people, if you think of it a bit like waves on the sea, you're going up and down and up and down, and that's just the way it is. They're the different stages you go through. So this is a version of that from IDEO. Again, inspiration. I have a design challenge. How do I get started? How do I conduct an interview? How do I stay human-centered? So your brain is firing off in all directions. You're creating choices. That's divergent. When you make a choice, that's a convergent thought. So that's just really the key points about that. Now, this is just another example. Sometimes companies as well will have their own internal models. So this is the IBM model, and they call this the loop. So you see the way it's like infinity model, which never ends. So, and that's really what design thinking is. You're going around and perfecting and going again, you know? So their model is you observe, you reflect, and you make. So you focus on user outcomes, which is obviously very important for a technology company. And I love the way they tell their teams, put your user needs first, because there's no point designing something because you think, oh, this will be brilliant. There mightn't even be a need for it, you know? So that's why it's really important that you stay focused on who you're designing for, who's going to use this thing at the end of it. Reflect then, so collaborate across the disciplines means you can move faster and work smarter. And also you get great ideas when you have a multidisciplinary team. It's amazing what you come up with as a team, you know, rather than an individual. And I really love their phrase, restless reinvention. Everything is a prototype. So you listen, watch, learn, and correct. And I feel just that phrase gives you permission to be innovative, doesn't it? You know, it's amazing the way wording works. So this then is a model similar that we've developed. I work over in the research center with Design Plus, so I kind of connect academia to companies. So the way we work with companies is you kind of discover, so we need to understand where you are, what the resources are that you have. Then we define down different ideas, and we look at all the main challenges that they have in the framing section. And we see, right, are there any, opportunities? What are the challenges this idea might face? That's what's going on typically in the framing section. The innovation piece then is where you start to come up with ideas, you think about concepts, and as we said, you're iterating them and testing them. And then finally, the action phase is where, the idea is finalized and it's actioned, whatever it's going to be. So you can see all the frameworks really have a similar thinking. It just depends what approach you want to take. Now, in your instance, you have all set up from last week, and even a couple of the new people have, I know, because you were in touch with me, which is great, a Miro board, a Miro account, and you have a Miro board on it, right? So I'm going to explain a couple of things to you first, and then I'll just quickly hop onto the Miro board, and you can hop onto yours. So basically, I have put a framework onto your board. So I just want to explain quickly the piece that you're working on. So the framework is going to build over time. So what you have at this moment in time is the mapping section, if you like. So our perception, it's called in the model I'm developing, where you're looking at where you are and what you have. So in this particular model, we're trying to build leaders, right? Which is what you guys are, you're leaders in the space. So it's important that you think about your beliefs, your barriers, your internal blockers, and your external blockers. And this is based on work that was done by the Stanford University professor and psychologist Carol Dweck. Really interesting work. So the difference between really good leaders is good leaders have a growth mindset. So a fixed mindset are people that believe that their abilities and intelligence and talents are fixed. They're unchangeable. So what that means is they avoid challenges or new things. They tend to give up easily. and they may feel threatened sometimes. Okay, so this is helpful as well when you're working in a team. And then a growth mindset are people who believe that their abilities can be developed through effort, learning, and perseverance. They embrace challenges as opportunities to learn, and they persist in the face of obstacles and are inspired by the success of others. So that's what you guys are. Everyone in this room is of a growth mindset, or you wouldn't be on this particular program. And the reason it's important is that internal beliefs can create really significant barriers to change, both in an individual and in an organizational context, because if somebody believes something, if it's deeply ingrained within them, it's going to be very challenging to implement new ideas. So that's why, you know, change starts with you as a person and a human being. So it's really important that you look at yourself and go, right, well, what do I believe? I mean, if I believe this program that I want to implement across the organization is never going to work, or I have any sort of doubt in my mind, then it's never going to work. So this particular work is really important. And then actually, her book is called The Impact of Mindset, if you're interested in it. And it's how our mindset influences our behavior. So it's really, really interesting book. So, and her particular work has a significant influence on organizational development and personal development. So what her research does is she's drilled into how your mindset affects your motivation and your resilience and adaptability. And all these things are critical factors when you are trying to deal with change. So that's why that's in the framework. And then I've just put in explanations here, you know, as to, I suppose, guides really for you when you're working through the framework. So if you look at your internal beliefs, it's something that you feel really deeply within yourself, right? It can be positive or negative. So, you know, you could be an incredibly positive person. And none of this is good or bad. This is just something for you as a leader to look at and examine and note, right, this is what I'm really good at. This is what I'm worried about. This is what I actually believe. And you might find, as is often the case, when you get to the end of the program, you'll have a completely different mindset, or you may still have the same mindset. You don't know till you go on the journey. So an example of somebody, you know, if an individual believes in their ability to adapt and learn, then you will have a positive attitude towards learning and development naturally. If we look at barriers, these are obstacles or challenges that stand in the way. And every one of us has barriers to change that we want to make. You know, with the best will in the world and the best team in the world, there's always challenges. So the barriers can be physical or psychological, they could be external, and they will impede or slow down progress. So the reason you're documenting this is so that your brain is starting to work towards providing a solution, or you know, figuring out, how do I get around that barrier, basically. So an example of that might be financial resources, lack of financial resources, resistance to change. Maybe you have self-doubt, or literally there could be something physical blocking a path, depending on what it is you're trying to work on. An internal blocker, then, these are personal or psychological barriers, right? When you're trying to adapt to change. So it could be fear, and I've encountered that as well. I've also gone into groups where there might be resistance to change, and you might get this thing like, well, we tried that before and it didn't work. Well, okay, it didn't work, but what was the reason it didn't work? You know, so I suppose what I'm trying to do is prepare you for what you might encounter with different teams or different people, so that you have a process to work through it, basically. A cognitive bias, that's another example of a blocker, an internal blocker. So a person with a fear of public speaking might struggle to present new ideas during a change initiative. So obviously that's going to affect how they contribute to a team environment or to a change process. And then the external blockers, obviously these are, you know, challenges that are outside of your control or the group's control, but they'll definitely impede change impact. So this might be resource constraints. There could be policies in place within the organization that you're trying to implement the change in. It could be market conditions, and at the moment the market's all over the place, as we know. External competition might be a blocker. So these will usually require some form of problem solving and adaptation, right? And an example of that might be a company I've put there who want to implement a new software package. So one blocker might be a compatibility issue with the existing software, or maybe there could be resistance from staff for whatever reason. They might prefer the current system, or they mightn't understand, well, why are we going through all this pain of a new system? Okay, so these are just different things you need to look at when you kind of start there with your Miro board. So then looking at your personal strengths and values. So these are a crucial skill within change management, because your strengths and values will help you align your efforts with the goals of the organization, or whatever it is that you're trying to do or make change for, right? So whatever, you're good at, that's what you want to drive forward within any sort of change management system. Decision making, your personal values really serve as a guiding compass for decision making as well. So there might be things that you feel, this is really important to me, I'm never going to change my mind on this. Like one thing that I suppose is important to me, which I spoke about to you last week, would be inclusion, right? So no matter what team I'm on, I'm bringing that with me. That is something I really believe in, that we should have a world that works for everybody. It's just something that's in me. So that's just, I can't help that. I can't stop it. It's something that's going to come out in every team I'm ever on. So you will have something similar that's important to you that will come out no matter what you do, because it's who you are as a human being. And it's a really good thing to know what that is. Is there anything else I need to tell you? That I suppose just having a clear understanding of your values help you make choices then that align with the principles and ethical standards that you're trying to put together, or with the particular organization. So they're really, really important, right? And then again, things you might consider, resilience and adaptability is really, really important, because you're going to have to overcome obstacles and setbacks. And as you go through the framework, particularly if you're trying to do it for an organization, you will come across obstacles of some kind, and it's how you navigate those, really. So when you are confident and you're driven by your values, if you really believe in what you're doing, you're going to make it work. Motivation and engagement. So, and working with teams as well, with people on your team, within organizations, if they see how their values align with what you're trying to do, that makes them much more committed. Carol Dweck, she's on the slide, Darka, with the baseline. So if ye all now hopefully can log into your Miro board, and I will try log into mine, and hopefully when I share the screen, we won't have any issues. Okay, I'm just going to try screen sharing now. Can you try record this part? Okay, I'll give it a go, but I'm just worried about the connection again. So wait till we see, start recording. Here we go. Okay, I think it's being recorded now. We'll just try this. Hopefully it lasts caramel. I wouldn't, we'll just see what happens. Okay. Okay, so hopefully, yeah, can you see my Miro board there?
Yeah, we can see it, Aisling.
Brilliant. Okay, great. Right. So what you have is a version. Now, my board is bigger than yours because I'm developing stuff on it for you the whole time and I'm working ahead of you. So what you will see is when you come into Miro, you should, I'm not bragging, it's just a reality, Derica. When you log into yours, you may log in and see this, or you could actually, oh no, do you know what? I need to click on the other one. Sorry, 1 second. You could go in somewhere like this. And you don't know what you're looking at, right? So the bottom little toolbar here, I hope you can see me pointing at it, I'm sure. Just keep clicking the minus till you zoom out. Oops. Or you can click this one, which will bring you to full screen, which means they'll put the whole board that you guys have in the middle of your screen, right? So to move around the board, I've also loaded these to the notes for tonight. Different toolbars mean. Toolbar might be slightly different than mine. I don't know because I'm on a page for a team version. So you may or may not have every single icon I have, but you have the bulk of them anyway. So you click on this little guy here, which will allow you to select something. So if I want to select a frame, so all the white spaces in the background here, they're called frames. So when you create a frame, I'll actually create one here. When you're creating a frame, you need to do that before you put something on it, because otherwise what happens is it'll just go here on this gray space and nothing is connected. Now you don't need to worry about this for now. I'm just giving you that as a piece of information. So literally to create a frame, that's this box here. I click on it and then I can choose pre-made ones here, or I can go custom. So I tend to choose custom because I'm usually building frameworks for people. So if I click on that, and then I literally would just click and drag and it would create the framework for me, okay? To move around the board, the only annoying thing I find about this system is you need to click on this guy twice to get the hand. So then I can move around the board. And this board is going to be very big by the time you're finished with it in 12 weeks or whatever, right? So you need to be able to move around it. These guys here are templates, you don't need them at this moment. Definitely don't put them onto this board that you're working on because it's relevant to the course. But if you set up a new board, work away and play with the templates. They have, you know, different ones for different things, like Scamper, project management ones. You can do great things with it. If I wanted to add a piece of text, I just click on T. Whoops. And then I click and start. Now, I would normally have put that on a frame, as I said, which is the white space at the back. So it's gone in very small, and I can just increase the text size here as you would with Word or whatever. So I could just type something in there if I wanted to. I might actually put that on a frame. Wait till we see. So I'll just put testing here, and then I can just zoom in. So you do, and then I have to go back, grab my hand and move the board up. Now, my hand is moving the board at the moment, right? So if I wanted to click testing, I've got to go back to the arrow. I click on it. I click testing and then I'm back in. I can go 1, 2, 3 or whatever I want. That board there is the very same as the Word one. You can embolden it. You can put in, you know, you can align it whatever way you want. You can change the text color if I want. I just select it and put the color on it, and then it changes the color. So the exact same as Word. Oh, sorry, that's moving about a bit. 1 minute now. Okay, so I can highlight it if I want. I can put in a background into a box if I want. I can add a comment and I could lock it. So if it was something that I didn't want moved out of position, I can click on the lock and then it will lock it in place. You can change the font type here if you want, which is handy as well. You might have a preference for whatever. So if I click on that and I want to get rid of it, I can just delete it like I would in Word and it's gone. What else do I need to show you? If I want to add a shape, a Post-it note. This is a sticky note. So you're going to need loads of these, right? So you click on that and I can pick a sticky note. And then there's my sticky note. So I click wherever I want it to go. I can make it bigger if I want, or I can drag it sideways. So you just call it test or whatever. So usually a Post-it note, you'd be using that for different ideas that you have. And most of the time you might color code them depending on what you were working on. I can put in different shapes underneath that. So if I click there, there's all my different shapes. So just pick circle and click and drag. If it goes like an ellipse, if you hold the Shift key on your keyboard, it'll turn into a circle. Once I have that, sometimes, especially if you haven't drawn a circle before, you might find maybe the border is not thick enough for you or whatever. So you can click here and I can make the border thicker and see the way it's getting thicker in the back. I can also put a different color on the border of the circle if I want. And then if I want to actually put a color inside the circle, you go to the button to the right of it. And then I just click on the color I want and the color is filled in. Now, just because you could, what's the phrase? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So that's another thing in design you'll discover, because sometimes you think, oh, that would look amazing. But then actually when you see it there, or when you go to try type on it, you know, or it mightn't print out great or whatever. These are all things you kind of learn as you go along. So if I wanted to change the shape of that, I can click on it. I can go up here and then I can just click on square and it'll turn it into a square. So that's one thing I do like about this. Triangle. There we have a triangle. So it's really handy. This is a connection line. So you might want to connect that, whoops, to the triangle and then click away for whatever reason, because it might be a process that you're trying to describe. There's a marker or a pen. So if you have a Wacom, you can do what you want with the Wacom. So you can draw over it. A Wacom, if you're not sure, if anybody's not sure, it's like an external drawing pad. So it's like a notebook, but it's just a flat little plate type thing that you connect to your computer, but it means that you can use a pen with it. So I could use the pen to write what I wanted instead of trying to use the mouse. So it's handy. That's for comments. So if I wanted to put a comment beside something, I might click here and then I might just say, check this is right or something like that, you know, and then click away. And then there's a comment. The comment will be on it when you click on it, basically. That's your frame. This then is where you upload. So if you want to upload a file, you click there. So in your case, you're going to want to upload your business model canvas. So you click on this and you go to My Device, and it's the exact same as uploading a file to Microsoft, what is it, File Explorer, I think it's called in the Microsoft system. Or if you're uploading something to the cloud, it's the exact same thing. You just go to My Device and you find the file on your computer. Is there anything else I need to show you? There's more apps here. So you might want to stick in a sticker or an emoji, or you might want to create a mind map. I'm not going to click them because I don't want to wreck the board, but you'll just have to play with it basically to see, you know, to learn it. That's the best way to do it, really. This is my Marissa. Yeah, can you, sorry, 1 minute. Do you make it on type of self-awareness? I'll have a look at that, Jacqueline. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I'm actually going to do a screenshot of that and I will have a look and see if I can find anything, because it's really, it's well worth doing for leadership, as you obviously recognize. So sorry, the Miro board. So then just looking up here, this will bring you back to your boards. So if you had a lot of boards, which I do for different clients and different things, I would click on that and it would bring me back out to my dashboard. This is the name of the board. Now I've tweaked the names of your boards, so don't change them, please, because it means when I'm trying to load stuff to the board, I know that I'm on the right board. So I think what I did with yours was I put your name and then I put SDI and then Ashton's framework. So I knew what I was working on. So if you can leave the names set up the way I've set them up, that'd be great. But as I said, you can set up a totally new board for other things if you want to. It's just for your projects that you leave it set up here. I can search. So if I want to search for a name, so I have all your boards connected. So if I go, just try Nuala, I hope I pick one that I have. Do I? Yes, Nuala's in it. Click on it, and it brings me straight to Nuala's board. Now I created that through an embed piece of code, right? So I could look then at Nuala's board if I wanted to check what she's doing and see, not even to check what she's doing. I'm not going to be doing that. The only reason I have all the boards here is so that I can add the different, the new bits of the framework as we go along. I just didn't want to give you the whole thing in advance because it's better just to tick along as we do each lecture, basically. So I can click on that and it's now loading Nuala's board. Hopefully, I think you can see that in the background as well. So if I go see the board. So there's Nuala's board. So I could just bring over whatever I wanted to bring over onto Nuala's board then. So it's a brilliant collaborative tool. So it might actually be a tool that you might want to consider using with teams, your own teams or different projects that you're involved with. It's great because it's collaborative, you can get so much done because everybody can hop in and out and do their bits of work on it, and several people can work in it at once. So I'm going to close it. Now I've loaded a file that explains, as I said, all these little icons, or the bulk of them, up to your Blackboard. So you'll be able to follow along with that when you're playing with it. So what I want to explain here, I just need to move out to what you are going to see. So now I just need to zoom that down. Okay, so I'm zooming out there quite a bit. So this is the area that you are going to start working on first. Can we see each other's boards? No. So actually, that's a great question. Thanks, Jacqueline, because I would have forgot to say that. So I can see everybody's boards. And as I said, the reason for that, the only reason I'm looking at it, I don't actually care what you're working on. That's up to you to do it. But it's just for me to go in and out and put onto the framework the next piece that you're meant to be working on. That's the only reason I have all the boards connected. You can't see anybody else's board if you haven't shared it. So your board is a unique journey for you. It's completely personal to you. You don't have to worry about anybody seeing it. And what I'd say to people is, be completely honest and just dump everything on the board because it's for you. It's on your own account and it doesn't matter. You're going to get great results on your journey if you kind of document everything as you go. So here we can see is the current landscape. So literally, if you're going to go in and type there, you just click and you can type away on the text that I have in it. So I've just left these as prompts and you can refer to the notes if you're not 100% sure of what exactly you're meant to put in on that, okay, for each section. So you start there because you are going to be a leader in this area and you really want to understand what exactly could be blockers to this. What might your own internal barriers be, as we discussed. Strengths and values. So there's that section. So I'm just moving my little hand across here. So maybe your key strength is communication. Again, I've just lent sample ones in there. Values, maybe your key value is respect. That could be a big thing for you. And if you want to add something else, you will go over here. You might grab your sticky note, pick a color, stick the note, and type in whatever it is you want to say. And if you decide I want to resize that, just grab it and resize it. Having tutorials during our journey. No, this is a level 9 course, right? So you would be expected, if you need to delve into this tool more, you just have to go and learn it. Miro itself has fantastic tutorials on it. But if you're following, honestly, I've shown you really all you need to be able to use on the board, to use the board for the project. If you want to get more out of it, you could look on the Miro website and they have, as I said, brilliant tutorials on it and you'll get fantastic things out of it. It's really, really good.
Sorry, Aisling, that's not actually what I meant. My fault.
Oh.
I meant, like one-on-one time with you, just to make sure we're going in the right
No.
direction with our project.
No, that'll be up to you. So week 5, the first assignment will come out, right? And I will go through it, so you'll know exactly what you have to do for that. Week 6 is a group project, which is actually a hackathon. And I've given you lots of extra time for that, but I'll go through that as well. And then the final project you don't get till the end of the course, but I'll go through all that as well. So if you follow along, Katrina, each week with the different, there's a reason that the lectures are structured in a certain way. And if you kind of follow along, you can't go wrong, if you get me.
Perfect. That's great. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. If that makes sense. So what else was I going to say to you? I've lost my train of thought there now. Sorry, 1 minute. Oh, Darika put in there the Myers-Briggs test if anybody wants to try it for personality test and leadership, if anyone hasn't done it before. So this space here is literally, you put in whatever you want. This thing should look a complete mess, right? By the end of the 12 weeks, this whole thing will distill down into 1 A4 page, which I will have put onto the board. But you have to go through this entire process to get to the answers, basically. What email address do we send the link? That's on, it's my SETU address, Valerie. It's on the notes from last week. So if you send it to, 1 second, setu.ie, there. So you'll have worked through this. So I'm trying to click on the screen share now. Whoops. So that's step 1, okay. Now, this section here, right? Really what I'm kind of trying to make you do is think about something really transformative. It's a huge idea, but if you could make this happen, this would absolutely be incredible, right? So I'm kind of challenging you really to come up with a big goal that you could try working out throughout the process, right? You don't have to do it, but people that do this have found it incredible by the time they kind of got to the end of it. So think about that. So over here, you're thinking about, these are all the problems. This is like square box round hole territory. And this is tomorrow, where you have another view. And these are all my challenges with relation to this huge goal I'd love to achieve. But all you're doing at the moment is documenting what you have and documenting an idea. That's all you're doing. So working in the gray, we don't know the answer yet. And that's part of design thinking. Sorry. Business model canvas. It could be, Jacqueline. So some people might have a product idea, some people might have a process idea, and other people might want to actually work on a model. So I'm actually giving you creative license for you to pick what you want to work on, but it has to be clear within the end project. This is what I wanted to work on. This is where I was, and here I am now at the end, and this is what I solved, basically. So once you do that, then over here, I've loaded some theory, so little videos and things and key points so that you'll remember. You don't even have to remember it. Yes, do, Max. There's the normals video, and then you're following that you can have a look at here. So these are your reminders as to what you want, right? And this is also to show you that you can. So if you want to create boards at some point in time, you can embed PDFs, you can load up JPEGs. To do is put your current business model canvas here, and that's your starting point, right? Because we're all starting from somewhere. And then down here, you're going to go through each section and note what it is you're doing, really do a deep dive into it. Who are your user and targets, customer relationships, what's your vision, what's your mission? So all the different parts of the business model, basically, but you're starting to look at environmental impacts and environmental benefits as well, which you may not have thought about before now, okay? So up here, you're documenting everything. If I zoom out a bit, literally just documenting it. This is where you are. It's a brain dump. That's what this is basically, right? And then down here, as you're going through this, little insights might start to form, or you might start going, God, I never thought of that. So this bit here is for documenting the insights and different things you might find from research, you might find from just looking at where you are at this moment in time, or you might find from talking to stakeholders, right? And within that section, you'll be looking at, you know, is it functional? What do I need to think about? I need to be looking at the end of life. So all the stuff we kind of spoke about tonight. So these are all new bits to be thinking about. And anything else? Yes, again, environmental impacts, environmental benefits. So this is for your ideas. So you're going to have lots of ideas in this section, hopefully, from going through the first process, right? Now, this is, you're not going to do this in 5 minutes, right? So what I would say is just document here as soon as you can. This then is you're thinking about, right, what's working great within the system. Now, again, this is based on a business model. So if you're doing a product, you might ignore this and you might be thinking about something else. It's based on the business model. And down here, it's what's not working. So what we're trying to do here is capture what we might need to work on to improve the situation, or to improve the process that we're trying to perfect, right? And then out of that, eventually you'll be coming to, okay, people, this is what I need to work on. Profit, this is what I need to work on. Planet, this is what I need to work on. So at this point in time, don't be worrying about this. You are literally just, what's my current landscape like? This is what I have. These are the people I have. Or if it's just you, it's just you. These are my problems I've discovered from analyzing this. This is actually what's working great. And there might be something here that you can work on, or it's usually down here most of the time. But sometimes there could be something that's really amazing up here that you hadn't really drilled into before or thought about before, okay? So what I would say to you, it is up to you when you do this, you know, but I would say start doing it from this week and build each week. Do I understand the last assessment will be done after the course finishes? When can we get earlier, because if another module starting, we got it. I don't know. I will check that with Owen, but as far as I know at the minute, it's you get that the last week, but I'll have a look and see. I can chat to him about that, Jackie, if that's okay. Okay, so that is it. Any questions? You have instructions, as I said, for Miro with these. That's it, basically. Anything you want to ask? Katrina, sorry, where are you? Yeah, Katrina, do you want to ask something?
Yeah, I just had a quick question, Aisling, about the business model canvas. John, I'm just sort of speaking for myself here, but when we were doing the ones for PADR, the first one we did was based on a scenario, as in it was based on a particular set of circumstances. You know, like if there was
yeah,
if you couldn't import things anymore. We had COVID again, and you couldn't import things anymore, and you could only import things, or you had a supermarket that you could only sell things that were within 100-mile radius of where you are.
yeah.
So in that, so the idea I had for that, it's where is the business model canvas that I did, but it would only work in that particular set of circumstances. Do you know? I mean, outside of that, it just I don't think would really work in the real world.
Okay.
So. Yeah. So, and I think a few other people had ones as well. Now, certainly mine wouldn't, I don't think it would be feasible at all. But in that circumstances,
No
it
problem,
would
Mark.
have worked. Yeah. So that was the business
Yeah.
model canvas that we did. So the next one then was the lean canvas. And we came up with a different idea. Again, some people worked on the same one, but again, like I said, mine wouldn't have worked in the real world. So I did a different one. But
Yeah.
the one that I had was creating an app. And based
Right.
on me finding generous people to do the app, because obviously I couldn't do it myself. So there was a whole lot of things that were based on it, whereas I wasn't actually doing anything except pulling all these people together, if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's sort of the question that I'm asking you really is, which I have been quite inarticulate in, the current two parts that I have done for PADR's project wouldn't necessarily work on this. So my question is, let's say I used the first one, which was an app for like swapping herbs and stuff. Is it possible to use an idea that you think wouldn't work And if it doesn't work towards the end, I mean, if you go through it and kind of map out all the different aspects to it, if you decide at the end of it, or you look at the end of it and you think, right, this idea is not feasible, is that a failure as such? Even though you've done the process and you've gone through everything, but you've kind of worked at it and you've tweaked it and whatever, and you get to the end and you go, actually, no, do you know what? That actually won't work. That's my question, is in like, if you fulfill all of the briefs of using the framework that you provided and you do all the steps and you do all the bits and pieces and you get to the end and you think, actually, no, I see it clearly in front of me, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem, Max. That's fine. Sorry, people are just signing off, which is totally fine. I think, yeah, if the business model, ideally you would be using this for a real world situation. That would be my starting point. So if what you've done already won't work, that's fine. You can, like, the reason there's a blank one there is in case there was somebody in that situation. So it's totally fine. I mean, the whole thing with the innovation process is that you would usually come up with some form of solution. Yeah, Connie, you can use a different one just to answer your question there, no problem. So it would be unusual, right, to go through this process and you'd have completely nothing at the end of it.